Hello, and welcome to this edition of Faith to Live By. I'm Pam Christian, the researcher, writer, producer, and host of this weekly podcast where I explore current events from a biblical and prophetic perspective so we, as God's children, can know how He wants us to respond. If you've listened before, then you know I have been at this podcast since 2020, wanting very much to figure out what was going on, as it became clear then that evil had made significant advancements in our world and took most of us by surprise. We'd been living believing that while sure there was corruption everywhere, we believed the good in our world far outweighed the bad. What we've been caused to learn, however, is that it was all an intentional illusion that some of the most wealthy and powerful people in the world had created in order to ultimately cause the people of the world to serve them while they promoted the kind of one world government and order they wanted. At this point, I think most of these self-appointed elite are in it for the money and power, without the realization that the rest of the self-appointed elite are knowingly empowered by Satan. The whole agenda of this one world order is entirely anti-Christian, anti-God of the Judeo-Christian faith. The advancement of evil and corruption has become more and more evident, especially since 2020. However, at the same time, God has been far more gracious to His people and those who are yet to become His people by giving timely revelation to His trusted prophets, who in turn have shared what God has said so that all of God's people can be prepared for what is now imminent and be equipped to step into their rightful place in God's plan. With the help of what God has been saying through His prophets, we can discern the times, we can understand what God is doing, and we can and must respond to what He's asking of us, so His kingdom will is done on earth as it is in heaven. The fact we are alive today, when God's judgment and justice will be seen by the entire world, the fact that we are each one born with a specific purpose or a lifetime assignment, the fact that God is now preparing the way for each one of us to step into our individual purposes, which will allow us to function corporately as the ecclesia God always intended the church to be, the fact that we can actually partner with God to see and experience His kingdom will done on earth as it is in heaven is truly awesome, magnificent, and beyond anything the world has ever known. We who are alive today are living in a time God has planned since before creation, a time described by God with one word: unprecedented. It's been repeatedly shared by different prophets that God plans on removing people from positions of influence and power in the governments around the world who have taken those positions illegitimately. We are now awake to the fact that there is a great number of rogue governments, institutions, organizations, and even churches in our world today. All of the people who head these groups have assumed positions of authority and power without God's appointment or favor. As a result, we have experienced the truth of Scripture passages that state, when the righteous increase, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people groan. Proverbs 29:2. In light of this, we should also note what Proverbs 21, verse 1 says: "The king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever He will." And we can also read in Daniel chapter 2, 21-22, God changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with Him. Last week, I asked you to make a point of learning what you are passionate about and to seek the Lord to know your personal lifetime assignment. Next, I asked you to make a commitment before God to step into your lifetime calling, and I truly hope you've begun that process. As each of us step into our personal destiny, we join God's effort of seeing His people act in unity, fulfilling His corporate purpose for the ecclesia to be restored to her rightful place of victorious influence over evil in our world. With this week's podcast, I want you to more fully understand God is removing evil people from positions of power, authority, and influence, so that the righteous men and women whom He has planned to partner with Him in these very days can take their rightful place. And as it turned out, this past week, God provided us some amazing evidences of his shifting people around to accomplish his will. Your chance to fulfill your personal God-given life's purpose is immediately before you. I don't want you to miss your opportunity. I've said before, unless we are living according to our personal God-intended purpose, we have no chance at finding true personal fulfillment in this life. And I hope you quote me on that. I am really looking forward to sharing with you what I've prepared for today. As always, I am gleaning from current events to understand how God is working in the world. While you may know the specific news stories, what you'll hear from me is my take on how everything is being used by God to restore the ecclesia and reform the world. James Roguski is my guest today, who will further enlighten us about the World Health Organization's effort to increase their relationship with Big Pharma, which he reveals is purely based on greed with absolutely no concern for public health. They have announced their provisional agenda for the next rounds of negotiations, which they want to wrap up by the end of the year out of concern for what Donald Trump might do if he is elected president. When I interviewed James, I had no idea what was about to hit the news specific to Donald Trump's plan to investigate the childhood disease epidemic in America that is widely disproportionate to other countries. It seems the World Health Organization has even more reason than before to be concerned what will happen if Donald Trump becomes president. I say that because of events that occurred last week in Arizona, beginning with the speech Robert Kennedy Jr. gave to representatives of major media in Phoenix, Arizona, specific to his presidential campaign. I strongly encourage you to watch it in its entirety using the link in the show notes. And please make a note he arrived late, so fast forward to about the 30-minute mark or so in the video. After the Democrat National Convention concluded, when the Democrats controlled by the establishment needed to end on a high note, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. shared his experience as one who was part of the family that launched what's been called an American political dynasty and as a longtime member of the Democrat Party. He revealed the horrible treatment he received from his own party in seeking to be the Democrat presidential candidate, which led to his decision to run for president as an independent. Hearing him share his personal experience revealed the same spirit as his uncle John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, who, having learned of the corruption in our government, set out to correct it, which cost him his life. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, was assassinated November 22, 1963. The official narrative about who assassinated him has been the subject of much skepticism that is only heightened by the fact that some of the official documents which were supposed to have been released to the public in 2017 are yet to be released, which RFK Jr. is calling for them to be released. In his speech, RFK Jr. exposed the Democrat Party's corruption in many areas, including their penchant for ongoing wars and the military complex, censorship, big pharma, big tech, big agriculture, and big money. He talked about the party's efforts to weaponize government agencies and abandoning democracy, weaponizing media, suing opposition, and disenfranchising the American voters. He said they ran a sham primary, a shameful debate, and appointed a successor without delegate election. RFK Jr. explained how he came to meet with former President Trump, which allowed them to discover the many issues over which they existentially agree, although he was quick to express there remain several issues over which they strongly disagree. The two men took note of Abraham Lincoln's appointment of a team of rivals, which history recognizes as Lincoln's political genius. You can learn more about this from the book by Pulitzer Prize winner Doris Kearns Goodwin. And if you use the link I provide in my show notes, your purchase will go through my Amazon affiliate account, earning me a small commission, which helps support this podcast. President Trump ended up asking RFK Jr. to be enlisted in his administration should he win the presidential election of 2024, and to be the lead on a committee to investigate the childhood disease epidemic. RFK Jr. shared it was a very serious and spiritual decision for him, that he prayed daily about it, which led him to realize with Trump's offer, he would be in a position to make a difference in many areas that are deeply important to him, that he would have no chance to do with the Democrat Party. Then he shared the list. He wants to end forever wars, end childhood disease epidemic, protect free speech, secure the borders, unravel the corporate capture of the regulatory agencies, get the United States intelligence agencies out of the business of propaganda, censoring and surveying American citizens, and stop election interference. He highlighted his interest in children's health as something he's been focused on for the past 20 years, and he asks people to view the video of Callie and Cassie Means, who have been advising both RFK Jr. and Donald Trump on the real health crisis in America. The link to this video is in the show notes. With this, RFK Jr. announced he was suspending his campaign, accepting Donald Trump's enlistment potential, and providing his support of Donald Trump for president. Do you know how huge this is? It's estimated that between 5 and 10% of American voters who support RFK Jr. will now vote for President Trump. It was a highly strategic decision that included leaving his name as presidential candidate for some 40 out of the 50 states. And this decision came at a high cost for him. Not only was his Secret Service protection revoked because he suspended his presidential campaign, which doesn't make sense, but his family posted a public statement. Kerry Kennedy posted a statement in response to her brother suspending his candidacy and supporting Trump, stating, "Our brother Bobby's decision to endorse Trump today is a betrayal to the values that our father and our family hold most dear. It's a sad ending to a sad story." Statements like his family gave reveal to me the lack of critical thinking that promotes strict party affiliation and division. Why allow family relations or any relationship to become strained and even damaged over political differences? I pray the Kennedy family will follow in RFK's example with his relationship with Trump to unite on what we can agree upon for the greatest good and let what we don't agree upon be secondary. Now about his Secret Service protection. You might remember RFK Jr. was denied Secret Service protection 5 times before the Department of Homeland Security granted it shortly after the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump on July 13th. The loss of protection is highly questionable. Kennedy said that he had suspended his campaign in 10 battleground states, but he will be on the ballot in the other 40 states during his August 23rd address. This should be enough for the protection to continue, especially in light of the history of providing Secret Service protection. Major presidential and vice presidential candidates typically receive Department of Homeland Security protection within 120 days of the first Tuesday of November in an election year, and August is well within that window. Additionally, President Jimmy Carter gave Ronald Reagan and other GOP candidates Secret Service protection long before the 1980 election, and Kennedy's uncle received Secret Service protection 441 days before the 1980 election, even though Kennedy had not formally announced his candidacy. Clearly, there is still bad politics between the Democrat Party and RFK Jr. I love what Dan Bongino posted on X. He wrote, "When a lifetime Democrat from an iconic Democrat family who tried to run as a Democrat and whose running mate was a Democrat warns you about the dangers of voting for the Democrat in this election, you should probably listen." Add to all of this, on August 26th, through Amanda Grace, God provided a most powerful word about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the entire Kennedy family, and also about the Democrat Party that further provides evidence of God's glorious intervention in humanity in our very days, as God completely reverses the evil that has advanced. You must watch this video. You'll find a link in the show notes. Now, with all of that as a backdrop, let me share with you my interview with James Roguski. James, if you don't know, is truly something of an expert about the World Health Organization and their actual agenda as an extension of the United Nations. I've had James on before, and as always, I appreciate his ability to explain the truth behind the World Health Organization, which is nothing like what they've tried to have the public believe. Here's my interview with James Roguski. James Roguski, it's so good to have you back again. There is so much going on in the world, and certainly the World Health Organization still has their fingers and tentacles in virtually everything. I understand that there was a provisional agenda that was published recently. Can you tell us about that and what it means?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. And contrary to what a lot of people reported, the pandemic treaty is still being negotiated. A lot of people reported that it had failed or been rejected, but they just had not reached an agreement. And those negotiations have continued. They had meetings in July, and they just announced their provisional agenda for the meetings that are scheduled from September 9th to the 20th. So they're having 2 weeks of meetings to go over what many people call the pandemic treaty. Officially, they refer to it as the pandemic agreement. And the latest document that was published on June 1st during the World Health Assembly, they highlighted the text either in yellow, green, or unhighlighted. And what that means is that the green text is they've already pretty much agreed, and that's a sizable proportion of the document. It's a 35-page document at the moment. Um, Substantial portions are highlighted in yellow, which means they had a subgroup or some, interim agreement upon the text, and they still have maybe half of the document yet to be agreed upon, and so they are going at it full steam. And I'd like to share something that I don't know if you've heard this. This is from a couple of months ago. The group that started these negotiations, in my mind, the independent panel, they came out with a document back in May of 2021. Well, a couple of months ago, they came out with another statement, and these are their words. Okay? They said that they are on a war footing to get this treaty agreement adopted before the end of the year because they're concerned about a change in administration in the United States. They have a friend in the Biden-Harris administration, maybe not so much if a different president were to be inaugurated next year. They want this done before the end of the year. So they're having negotiations set for September 9th to the 20th. And then they also have negotiations set for early November. And they went on to say that they want to bring an end to vaccine apartheid. Let that sink in just for a moment.
Well, I need
Right?
you to explain it first. What would you mean by vaccine
Well,
apartheid?
it's not what I mean. These are their words.
Okay.
They in the 2.5+ years that I've been reporting on what they're up to with these negotiations, all of the documents, all of the videos and such, all of the statements that they've ever made, not once have they ever questioned anything coming out of big pharma. They haven't questioned the government tactics of travel restrictions and lockdowns and social distancing restrictions and isolation and quarantine. They have not raised any of the truth about the fact that masks don't really work and the tests are fraudulent and the drugs like remdesivir or using respirators for or ventilators I should say for respiratory problems, not to mention the injectables that no one should ever call vaccines. They don't stop transmission. They don't stop infection. People are on their 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th boosters now, and they just, the FDA just approved, new Comirnaty and Spikevax from Pfizer and Moderna. Wait a minute, these are not vaccines. These are ongoing injections of poison that might, trigger an immune response for a couple of weeks, according to them. They have never questioned any of that. What they are negotiating is equitable access to pandemic-related products. Never mind that those products don't help anybody and they actually harm people. That's where the profit is. And so, these negotiations are just horrific in the concept that, the nations in Africa, based on whatever, data the WHO puts out, if you compare the nations in Africa to the nations in North and South America, they did 16 times better than America. And if you look at it from a point of view of Europe, maybe 20 to 25 times better because they didn't get as many jabs and drugs and tests.
Okay. All right. And is that information that the CDC or the World Health Organization is publishing?
Well, the data is on the WHO COVID, data webpage, which is, buried on their website. You can find it. The last time I checked, approximately 175,000 deaths were attributed to COVID in the continent of Africa. And there's 1 point some billion people in Africa. People don't realize that there are quite a large number of people in Africa. They had 175,000 deaths attributed to COVID, where, in North and South America, it was like 2 point some million. And on a population, per capita basis, they did spectacularly better than the Western world. So one would think that we should be going there to find out what it is that they did, but that's not profitable for big pharma.
So it's all greed generated. Every bit of this is greed generated.
What they learned, I agree, what they learned is that big pharma was actually not big enough. They want investment capital to flow to the African nations and other, relatively low-income nations around the world, because it's difficult for local tyrants to force whatever policies upon their people, whether it is drugs or tests or masks or obviously the quote unquote vaccines, if you haven't manufactured them and have them sitting on the shelf. They ran into logistical problems with, cold storage and shipping product from wherever it was made in the United States or the UK or Europe or wherever. And they want homegrown manufacturing. They talk about geographically distributed manufacturing capacity so that, if a problem is in Africa, it's got products to be pushed upon the people that are made right there, sitting on the shelf, ready to go. Never mind that those products actually harm people. The mindset is, oh, the way you stop a pandemic is not, oh, stop the war and stop, all the people living in displaced settings as refugees in encampments that, don't have the sanitary conditions or, good clean water and food, and forget about the stress levels. They're not looking at the root cause of people's stress and dis-ease. They're just marketing and promotion of pharmaceutical products, whether it be fraudulent PCR tests. A couple of weeks ago, I put out an enormous article to simplify the fact that the PCR, its use as a test, is fraudulent. Anybody can go to pcrfraud.com and realize that court cases and government documents and peer-reviewed, articles in journals clearly state that using the PCR process as a diagnostic test is fraudulent. But they're doing that around the world, whether it's for COVID or, what I call moneypox, they call it mpox or monkeypox, bird flu with, testing being done in poultry operations or dairy operations, or, they're testing wastewater treatment plants around the world. The CDC has its, nationwide testing. All you have to do is a search for CDC wastewater surveillance. What this treaty is primarily about is they want to spend billions of dollars to build out the industry in nations that, quite frankly, have higher priorities, but don't choose to invest in testing and genomic sequencing and surveilling the landscape to try to find pathogens with pandemic profiteering potential. Nations should be working on core fundamental health, but the industry that controls the WHO wants investment to go into all of the things that I just mentioned.
It sounds absolutely monstrous.
It's evil. You could go with evil. I think that applies. And so if a person believes that there's some boogeyman pathogen out there just trying to get you, and that the solution is to go to, into the medical establishment to swallow a poison in the form of a pharmaceutical, get tested by using fraudulently using a laboratory process as if it could diagnose something, and then injecting poison into your body to turn your cells into factories that manufacture the purported poison from the pathogen. If you believe that, you're about as far away from, God as I could possibly imagine. Understanding what they are doing to deceive people is step number one. We live in an age of deception, and until you see through that deceit, you're going to continue to fall for the propaganda and the fear. And if you step out of that and find the courage to look for the truth, the truth is that your immune system has the capability to keep you healthy, but you have to think right. You have to have healthy emotions, healthy environment, healthy food, good, clean, pure water. And if those things are lacking, that is the problem that
Right.
needs to be solved, not adding in, pharmakia and the deceit of drugs and jabs and tests that are very, very profitable for those who, want people to believe that that's the path towards truth and health.
You're making excellent points. And I think the majority of people, regular everyday people, have for generations believed that the health industry is working for our benefit. And we're clearly learning, especially since 2020, that that is not the case. So, as individuals, of course, we can refuse to give into the fear, as you mentioned. We can refuse to comply with whatever they tell us to do, sequestering or distancing or wearing masks. We can refuse all of that. But what more can be done, James, to really stop this momentum, this evil momentum?
Well, every moment is an act of God. And if you choose to make it, just add an extra O in there. If you choose to behave in a manner that is good and true and simply point out the reality, okay? Number one, the use of the PCR process is not capable of diagnosing disease. It is not capable of identifying an active virion or pathogen. It's not possible. So the propaganda that has gotten people to believe, oh, I have to go get tested for whatever that test might be for, is clearly a lie.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at what most people grew up believing the definition of a vaccine is, whether or not people believe in the concept of virology and contagion or whatever, when you see that the definition of the term has been changed, if you cannot recognize the deceit, I don't know what to say to people. If you look at the fact that, oh, you didn't get, a 2-shot course of Pfizer and Moderna, you need a booster and a booster and a booster and a booster. And, now they're recommending it for children 6 months old, even though they are saying in the document that, approved it, well, the circulating variant that it was made to protect you for is gone, right? It's like serving up spoiled milk. It's beyond its expiration date. By the time they get it out, whatever they made it for is no longer what is circulating. What good is it? But, people just blindly have been deceived
Mm-hmm.
to trust what the media and big pharma says. And so I encourage people to ask questions. Okay. You can ask your, family, friends, neighbors, associates, um, when do you think this is going to end? How is this ever going to end? How can it possibly be that they're using a test that cannot identify a virion or diagnose a disease, and they continue to give injections that don't stop infection or transmission? Um, do you see a problem here? And if people don't see a problem, they don't have eyes to see.
Right. But getting back to what I asked, we can individually and even as families resist, these lies. But what more can be done? What more can we as a unified group do to stop this craziness?
It starts with awareness. And, I encourage everyone to start by identifying your allies. You can try to save people who don't want to be saved, and that's a valid effort. But ideally, what I encourage everyone to do is identify your family, friends, associates, and so forth who get it, who understand. I'll give you a little bit of breaking news. It's not for the United States, but one thing that is being done in New Zealand is Kirsten Murfitt just got the New Zealand government. This is not available in the United States, but in New Zealand, to they're circulating a petition to put a referendum on the ballot so that the people can decide whether or not New Zealand should exit the WHO. In the United States, if people go to exit the WHO.com, you can see that there's legislation, HR 79, same idea. It's a step further. It's actually legislation as opposed to a petition to encourage legislation. We've already got 60 members of Congress to tell the US government to exit the WHO. But it really starts when you look in the mirror. Now, I don't have one of these, but many people do. If the mirror in your bathroom is the mirror of a medicine cabinet, and behind that mirror, you have a bunch of prescription medications that you swallow on a daily basis, you better look, into the eyes of the person in that mirror and ask yourself, are you poisoning yourself on a daily basis? Have you fallen for the deception? Because the problem starts with you. And if you realize that you have the God-given ability to heal, if you have the belief in the goodness that gives you that ability, then you start to look with a questioning eye towards the lies that are coming, through television and the media, purporting to be able to do better than Mother Nature by injecting you with ingredients that you have no idea what's in them or how they work or what they actually do. Step number one is to look at yourself and make choices on a daily basis to live a healthy, good, clean, and pure life, and trust that your body has the capacity to keep you healthy. Before you preach to someone else what they ought to be doing, get your own house in order first.
Good point. Now, you said we have exitthewho.com where we can look at proposed legislation, and there's 60 members of our Congress who are on board. But couldn't that also be a template for people from other nations to do something similar?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. It's really very simple, but bigger than the WHO is big pharma. Okay. The WHO's budget is about $4 billion a year. They're pushing their general program of work right now. They want to raise $7 billion over the next 4 years to keep their operation going, right? Well, what is their operation? Their operation is supporting, big pharma and all the products that big pharma puts out. But if you think about it, one little medication from any pharmaceutical company is a $4 billion a year business. The WHO is tiny compared to the beast of big pharma. And so you have to ask yourself, are you going to a healthcare practitioner who's, treating you as an individual and giving you appropriate information as to how to maintain your health? Or are you going to somebody who immediately diagnoses you after asking you one or two questions about your symptoms and gives you a poison to change your symptoms, or an injection, of something that you have no idea what it is, or how it does what it's supposed to do? Until people step out of the big pharma beast, that is so much bigger than the WHO. It pervades every aspect of our life. And so it starts with looking at what you are doing to get closer to God and live a good, clean, healthy life. look at the food that you're eating, the water that you're drinking, and whatever else it is that you might be putting into your body and allowing to enter into your mind,
Hmm.
and clean up your act,
Yeah.
and get away from, these poisons.
Good advice all the way around, good information. This has really shown all of us around the world since 2020 the importance of our being informed. And it's not easy. It's not easy to get the truth about products that we might have prescribed to us. But with you and all the research you've done, you are offering people a tremendous amount of help. How can people go to your Substack page or any of your other sites to learn what they need to be informed?
Everything is on jamesroguski.substack.com. And if you go to pcrfraud.com or exitthewho.com, it'll take you to specific articles, but you'll end up at the same place on jamesroguski.substack.com.
Wonderful. James, I always appreciate having you on because we are living in such a crazy, crazy world, an evil world. And you said it correctly. It's definitely evil. And we need to overcome this evil. And those of us who have faith in God through Jesus Christ have our own marching orders of how to do that. And it's through prayer and information and decreeing what God says. And I'm very grateful too that God has been so gracious to all of us worldwide by speaking through his prophets, which again is something I explore with this podcast on a weekly basis. What God says and how God wants his people to respond in these evil times to overcome evil. I'll look forward to having you back again soon, James. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
As James indicated, the CDC has refined the word vaccination. America's frontline doctors recently explained that in actuality, the CDC is promoting disinformation by co-opting the word vaccine to mean something it has never meant. Quote, the pre-2015 vaccination definition was, vaccination is an injection of a killed or weakened infectious organism to prevent the disease. Straightforward, understandable, and aligned with the primary purpose of a vaccine. The 2015 to 2021 vaccination definition described vaccines as the act of introducing a vaccine into the body to produce immunity to a specific disease. The emphasis shifted from prevention to the generation of immunity. The September 2021 to January 2024 vaccine definition. During the COVID pandemic, the CDC refined the vaccines again. This time, the CDC described vaccination as an act of introducing a vaccine into the body to produce protection from a specific disease. This subtle change from immunity to protection is a startling admission that the CDC knows their new vaccines are less effective than traditional vaccines. And a few months ago, the definition was changed again. Per January 2024, Merriam-Webster, for the very first time in the definition of a vaccine, included introducing a preparation of genetic material such as mRNA. End quote. In light of everything James Roguski shared, this trend of ever-increasing injections and boosters must be reeled in. I look forward to RFK Jr. spearheading the committee to investigate epidemic of childhood diseases as well as many health issues in adults. And I love hearing RFK Jr. on Fox News express that he and President Trump are more concerned with leaving a legacy for healthy children than they are about the likely decline in shareholder values of pharmaceutical companies. I've questioned the ever-increasing injections given to children. Did you know early in the 1950s, children received only 4 injections? And that number was increased to 5 when vaccination for polio was added. Then it was increased again in the 1960s when vaccines for measles, mumps, and rubella were added. Since the late 1980s, the CDC has continued to add vaccines to the recommended schedule without taking any vaccines off the schedule. The number of vaccinations currently recommended has more than quadrupled since the 1970s. At the same time, children's health in the United States has seen a marked decline. Another point James made was what the United Nations called vaccine apartheid that I'm not sure we adequately explained. The term was coined in June 2022 by a United Nations human rights expert who called inconsistent access to immunizations a form of vaccine apartheid. James explained this is the reason the World Health Organization is partnering with Big Pharma to get drugs made and distributed locally in countries, or so they say publicly. As James explained, the World Health Organization under the United Nations is really all about greed. I appreciate the extensive work James has done and encourage you to visit his websites. I've got them listed for you in the show notes. Just as God has promised through his prophets, things are intensifying, and we will observe things seemingly become much worse before they get better. In fact, again, on August 24th, God spoke through Julie Green stating, quote, "My children, remember, they will try to stop my David at all costs. They are willing to put everything on the line, no matter how bad it is and how bad it makes them look. The clock is ticking for them, and it is about to strike midnight. Then the show will end. But this time it will be the hardest not to walk by sight. Do not fear, and remember, the great I Am is here for vengeance, and I will deliver you out of it all." End quote. When things become utterly chaotic, and it looks like all hell has broke loose, and it looks like evil will prevail, remember, God has promised his judgment of the wicked will be justice for his people. We are to pray against the advancement of evil. We are to decree and declare what God has said, both through his prophets and in the Bible. We need to prepare not only to withstand the last intense part of this battle, but to be in position to move forward once the victory is revealed. We need to do everything we can to find our place in God's plan, to partner with God to step into our victorious future. The Bible states God uniquely purposed each one of us for good or God's kingdom works before we were ever conceived, Ephesians 2:10. It also states God's children are the body of Christ, with Christ being the head, Ephesians 1:22-23. We need each part to do its work, Ephesians 4:16. To help you find your purpose, ask yourself and others, what are you naturally good at doing? What do you like to do that brings you personal satisfaction? What have others said they see you doing in the future? A book I can recommend is by Max Lucado. By using the link I provide in the show notes, you can purchase through my Amazon affiliate link, which will help support my ministry work. Max Lucado's book, More to Your Story Bible Study Guide. Discover your place in God's plan. Again, there's a link in the show notes. If you have ever wondered what were you born to do, if you've ever felt like there is some purpose you know you are yet to fulfill, if you've ever felt there is something more for you to do in this life, this is the time to learn what that is. Get ready with whatever you need, training, passport, language skills, and find your place in God's plan. Pray, seeking the Lord, ask him to confirm your lifetime assignment and to direct your steps to meet people and learn what you need so you don't miss out on what God has in store for you. On August 26th, on Elijah Streams, Johnny Enlow, explaining how God is raising up his people for kingdom work in the days ahead, stated, and I loosely quote, "If you simply know your assignment, you will experience greater health benefits. When we know who we are, what we're called to do, who we are called to be, what's our mountain of culture where the Lord has called us to function, what color you are primarily," referring to the colors of the 7 mountains of society, just knowing who you are in Christ brings health to our being. You'll find a link to that interview in the show notes. Each of us need to find our complete identity and assignment in Christ and seek God for anointing and favor, and then just take one step at a time on the path God sets before you. And I'll add, if what you sense you are to do is something you've never done, if it feels bigger than what you can do, that's a great indicator you're on the right track. Let's be inspired by Donald Trump, who stepped away from his billionaire lifestyle to accept the role of president in the United States to make a difference. And he did not do it for the money. He actually lost money during his first term, and most certainly is to this day with the exorbitant legal defense and campaign costs. Let's also be inspired by RFK Jr., who realized he had a better chance of achieving his deepest heart's desire by joining the Trump team than he possibly could on his own, even though it meant parting ways with long-held relationships. As Philip Brooks said, quote, "Do not pray for easy lives. Pray to be stronger men. Do not pray for tasks equal to your powers. Pray for powers equal to your tasks. Then the doing of your work shall be no miracle, but you shall be the miracle. I say amen to that. Next week, I hope to have another special guest to help us understand what God wants of his people in these very days. I did send an email to Deron Brunson, since the Brunson brothers lawsuit could remove every member of Congress who failed to vote to investigate the 2020 election. But I didn't hear from him on time for this week. However, he's open to being on again, so I'm shooting to have him as my guest next week. Also, I was just confirmed to be a guest on Rick Renee's Blessed to Teach show on Thursday, September 5th. I hope to see you there. Now, I ask you to listen carefully to my closing announcements, which include updates and more about upcoming events. On Friday, August 30th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Oasis Church, where Tim Sheets is pastor, is holding a healing summit, which will be live streamed with local church participation. Tim is expecting we will see and hear of great healings and deliverances. Speakers and presenters include Apostle Tim Sheets, Dutch Sheets, Clay Nash, Ken Malone, Greg Hood, and Pat McManus. You can learn more and watch the live stream using the link in the show notes. Alternately, you can search the list of churches to see if there's a participating church near you, or you can live stream from the Oasis Church website to participate. See if your church leadership wants to hold this event at your church, or invite several people to your own home and watch and participate as a small group. You'll find a link for that in the show notes as well. About our Greece travel plans. I know it may seem far off, but most people make plans for a significant vacation about a year in advance. So if you haven't already expressed interest in traveling with us in October 2025, now is the time to do so. We want to have about 30 people total because this size group works best for the specific tour I have in mind. We'll be walking the footsteps of the Apostle Paul. I'm using the time between now and February 2025 to determine if we have enough interest, and the trend indicates we definitely should. So, if you think you'd like to be part of the Faith to Live By Christian tour with me in Greece during October 2025, now is the time to get your name and number in your party on the list. There's no obligation at this point. You're just expressing your interest. While the specific details are subject to change, as it stands now, the week-long tour will include 4 nights at Divani Palace Acropolis Hotel in Athens, which includes breakfast, 1 night at Amelia Hotel in Delphi, which includes breakfast, 1 night at Grand Meteora Hotel in Kalambaka with breakfast, 2 nights at Mediterranean Palace Hotel in Thessaloniki, that includes breakfast, 2 dinners at local restaurants, tour guide throughout, deluxe coach throughout, admissions to museums and sites, tips to guides, drivers, and restaurants, and all local taxes. Estimated cost per person double occupancy room is about $3,000. Attendees need to arrange their own air travel to and from the Athens International Airport. To get your name on the list, send an email to faithtoliveby@PamelaChristianMinistries.com with the word Greece in the subject line. In the body of the email, provide your name, contact information, and number of people you expect to be in your party. This will place your name on the interested in attending list, but does not obligate you in any way. It merely assures you have first right of refusal come February 2025 when down payments are due. If you didn't get the details written down that I just shared, simply visit my Beyond the Podcast page using the link in the show notes. If you like what you hear from me with this podcast, I highly recommend my book series, my award-winning blog, and consider signing up for my certificate course in apologetics. My aim with that course is to help people learn how not only to use apologetics to share truth with others, but to help Christian leaders incorporate apologetics into their respective ministries so more Christians are learning how to share their faith. You can learn more by using the link in the show notes. For now, I offer my weekly podcasts, my blog, and bi-monthly e-newsletter at no cost. And certainly I have hard costs associated with doing all I do. If you've been blessed by my work and would like to help my work reach others, why not consider partnering with me? For as little as $10 a month, you can become a partner. Then together we can reach even more people for Jesus. Simply visit my Pamela Christian Ministries homepage and then click on the Give button at the top menu bar. Or if you prefer, you can go directly to the Give page using the link in the show notes. To become a partner, you can use my PayPal or Venmo account, but you will also see other ways you can support my work on that page. Whether you choose to become a monthly partner, give a one-time donation, purchase my books and products from my web store, or support my affiliate sponsors, anything you can do to help me continue this work would be greatly appreciated. And as always, your prayers and telling others about me and my ministry work is much needed. When it comes to my selection of affiliate sponsors, I first look for Christian-owned and operated businesses, and I make a point of personally using the products or services so I can fully endorse them. I seek sponsors that offer products or services you can get via the internet worldwide, and I specifically consider what is common to most people universally. So you'll find health, beauty, and wellness products through Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack supplements and from Operation Tomahawk and from QE Strong. Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack supplements are truly amazing and are available to my listeners for a 5% discount per purchase or a 10% discount for a monthly subscription using the promo code FTLB. Operation Tomahawk is a membership purchase program with an American-owned and operated company offering personal and household care products that are not made of toxins or genetically modified ingredients. Stop buying national brands from corporations that are part of the deep state cabal. Use the link in the show notes, and from the drop-down menu under How Did You Hear About Us, select Pamela Christian, Faith to Live By. You may have heard my interview with Rob Renee about QE Strong. Discover the benefits of quantum energy to overcome all sorts of ailments. Visit QEstrong.com and use the promo code FTLB at checkout to receive your discount. Then, my newest affiliate I'm really excited to bring you is Q Streaming. That's CUE Streaming Television. People with United States addresses can get over 3,000 channels, including live TV with streaming television without a contract. Get all of your local networks and favorite movie and sports and pay-per-view channels for about half of what cable costs. See the video promo link in the show notes to learn more. Affiliate sponsors only provide financial support to me when you purchase what they offer. So before you support Amazon or any other retailer, if I offer what you're looking for, please purchase through me. When it comes to special occasions, birthdays, or Christmas gifts, consider my books, jewelry, CDs, and more from my web store or any of the affiliate goods and services I offer. When you purchase from my web store, be sure to use the promo code TRUTH, TRUTH, to receive a 20% discount. Again, you'll find all the links in the show notes. If you like the content and resource material I bring you with this podcast, you'll find much more by connecting with me through my blog. In fact, my blog has been awarded 2 unsolicited awards for Christian content. And I'm also very active on social media. I can cover much more on social media than I can with this weekly podcast. And if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to my complimentary bi-monthly e-newsletter. I offer encouragement, special offers, and one of my signature recipes with each and every edition. Yep, I'm a foodie and I love to entertain, which is why Faith, Family, Friends, and Food is a bonus segment of my bi-monthly e-newsletter. To receive even more, please be sure to check out my dedicated podcast listeners page, Beyond the Podcast. Here's where we can connect exclusively and you can download complimentary devotionals, resources, and more. On that page, I also ask you to help me learn more about you and what you want by completing the form visible once you scroll down that page. And something that is very easy for you to do and would mean a lot to me is for you to rate, subscribe, or comment on this podcast according to what your preferred listening platform allows. You know how it works. The more likes and subscriptions to this podcast, the more opportunity we have to expand the listening audience. And that means we can reach more people with the gospel message of Jesus while helping people learn how to better apply their Christian faith. I hope you'll join me next week and tell your friends and family to listen right here on Faith to Live By, where we learn how to gain spiritual victory over life's issues. Until next week, I'm Pam Christian, asking you to remember Christ died for us. The least we can do is live for Him.